About those invalids you saw in that devil's house.
Poor bastards. All strapped down to the beds, with those lumps on their chest.
The medical staff tell me they were probably a type of cyst.
Cysts can get that big.
In some cases, yes. But supposing they're a kind of atheroma forming on the surface of the skin. It's just too big, and the appearance is all wrong. In the end, the medical team were at a loss. Those lumps were like nothing they'd ever seen. The fluid you said you got on your prosthesis when you touched one was burned off in the fighting, and the factory burned down too. None of the tests
You gotta extract him.
back at the base revealed a pathogen that could have caused them. Meaning we don't have a single sample to work with.
Flames.
What worries the medical team most is whether it's contagious. Whether there's a chance we could end up like that.
And?
Mother Base's sanitation control has always been strict. After all, war is great at transporting diseases. For the time being, at least.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Could be related. One more thing. About the surgery that had been performed on the people in the Devil's House.
Yeah,
You said that their throats were cut open, with an acoustic tube pushed inside?
right. The tubes were hooked up to tape recorders playing some kind of audio.
We picked up some of that audio through your radio transmissions and recorded it here. The intel team has been working on analyzing the communications log.
What have they found?
There's nothing tying the contents together. We've got a report on 3 deaths in a car accident on the autoroute near Marseille. Protests outside the Libyan embassy in London. A press conference with... Minister of Sweden. A 4-month-old weather forecast for Balikpapan. And then... appliances, cough syrup, and TV dinners. Assuming they're not all staged, they come off as recordings of your average public broadcasts.
Public broadcast. Just radio and TV signals.
Yes, and from all over the world.
He's coming too. Roger that.
Just to be sure. What else? A speech that sounds like it was recorded out on the street, and people chatting about how this year's tomato crop did.
And there's nothing they have in common.
We're partway through.
You gotta extract him.
That includes checking all audio ranges and running it backward and at different speeds. Then there's vocabulary.
Roger that.
Ideological comment points. But I don't think it's
That's
gonna
the
get
target.
Where were the recordings made?
There's nothing linking them from that angle either. Just like you reported, we've detected virtually every major language there is. French, German, Italian, Spanish, including South American accents. Then there's Russian, Hindi, Arabic, Portuguese, Mandarin, Cantonese, Japanese.
They're nothing if not...
Okay, subject is... You gotta extract him.
All covered. Ignoring the ones that have gone extinct, supposedly over 5,000 languages exist today. Besides, English
He's
is
coming too. Roger that.
English.
I know. Only 5% of the world's population is a native English speaker. But when you factor in those who've acquired it as a second language, nearly 1/3 of the people speak it. The world's dominant lingua franca. You gotta figure they had it. All the languages in that place.
No English.
You gotta extract him.
We didn't hear everything that was played in that room. We couldn't isolate the more distant sounds due to static and the program could have been set to change every day. In a nutshell, for reasons unknown, people in that room with a common medical condition were made to listen.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
It's not clear how the growths on their chests fit into it. It could have been treatment for them or maybe an experiment of some kind.
I'm guessing one person knows.
Yeah, Skullface. He was there. The only thing we can say for sure is that he's involved.
Никто не обнаружен. Прием! ЛКП, понял. Будьте бдительны. Не позволяйте им напасть на вас. Конец связи.
assignment complete. Please select a delivery point.
You mentioned that the man on fire was crushed under Sahelanthropus in its hangar.
Yeah. He was caught under the wheels of its transport platform.
But his body wasn't found.
What?
We searched the area the moment we arrived, but there was no trace of him.
I wasn't hallucinating.
I know. I trust you on that. That means someone must have taken the body. When I got there, everything was still as it was. Even Skullface hadn't been touched. I can't see a reason to sneak into a place like that and drag out the biggest, heaviest guy there.
What are you getting at?
The only option left is... he got up and walked away.
That platform ran him over.
Just ran him over.
You're saying that's not enough?
I don't want to believe it, but maybe not. He shrugs off bullets, even rocket strikes. There's no reason to think that would finish. Seems ridiculous, but I'll start gathering eyewitness accounts just in case.
If you dig up anything concrete, I want to know.
First, if I dig anything up. But I hope the hell I don't.
No kidding.
Volgan, the Gru colonel, was burned alive with the Shagohod during Operation Snake Eater 20 years ago, despite suffering severe burns to his entire body. He still clung to life. After you left Seleniarsk, Volgan's body was taken to a research institute in the outskirts of Moscow. Modern medicine couldn't explain why he was still alive. Not that the colonel was any ordinary man to begin with. That constant electric current he had running through his body that he could unleash at will. To be honest, I was always uncomfortable around him. Thought I might get electrocuted just by standing nearby. The institute studying him was tasked with investigating and developing human paranormal abilities. The comatose Volgan was used to further the Soviet Union's research into such abilities. But not long ago, the facility burned to the ground, and Volgan's body was never found among the rubble, even though the fire started in the room where they were keeping him. This occurred at around the same time you woke up. If Skullface was right, and a thirst for revenge can turn a man into a demon and keep the dead alive, then this man on fire who's been coming after us ever since you woke up, that just might be what's left of our old friend Volgan. It's not over yet. Back in '64, in Seleniarsk, you brought his plans for a utopia down in flames. That grudge is what's keeping him alive. The day the research facility holding Volgan burned down, a Soviet jumbo passenger jet happened to crash nearby, far away to the north of that hospital in Cyprus. The plane was a young boy who was being studied at the same facility. The plane fell 8,000 feet, but the boy's body was the only one not recovered. At almost exactly the same time as the crash, Volgan awoke in that facility. According to the Research Institute's documents, the gifts this boy demonstrated included psychokinesis and telepathy. To protect his mind from being inundated with other people's thoughts, he always wore a rudimentary form of psychic insulation, apparently. We don't know where this boy is, but if Skullface is connected to him, we may cross paths with him yet. This boy is part of a new age where nothing we understand about the world makes sense anymore. Don't let your guard down.
Это КП, понял? Внимание всем подразделениям. Отправить дивизию на помощь. Повторяю, отправить помощь. Конец связи.
The White Mamba, Nyokayam Pembe. He's the commander of the kids based out of Wala Yamasa. As you know, contract forces of Africa were stationed at that village. Anti-government forces hired ZRS to bring kids there from around Africa for training. But at some point, the adults with the PF started dropping like flies. This was right after we arrived in Africa. We don't know the cause. The kids ended up on their own. Must have been like fish out of water. Nothing to eat, no way to get back home. All the adults taught them was how to use a gun. Sure, they could shoot targets, but hunt for food? Not likely. They wouldn't have lasted long. Then the White Mamba showed up. He was faster and stronger than them, a better soldier, and he knew how to lead. I guess somebody wished upon a star, because their savior turned up like stardust straight out of the blue. The moment he arrived, the kids had their new commander. That was when they started attacking other villages. Word of the infamous White Mamba spread fast. But it isn't just his combat skills that got people talking. As you can tell from the name, he's the only light-skinned kid in the unit. Not to mention the blonde hair and the blue eyes. Not common in those parts. We have no idea where he came from or what he's experienced. The kid's a huge blank. But I'm sure you'll know him when you see him. One other thing. He's still a kid, so don't kill him. Be careful not to hit him with anything lethal. Not even a flesh wound. Our mission objective isn't just suppressing a bunch of militants. This is a DDR operation of the kids in that unit. DDR stands for disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration. Disarmament is obvious. We take their weapons off their hands. The demobilization part means dismantling their military organization to ensure they can't arm themselves again. To do that, you need to capture the unit's commander and have him order his men to disband. In this case, the commander is the White Mamba. There's nobody above him, so he's all we need to grab. Finally, reintegration. Through education and occupational training, we give them a means to live besides war. A lot of kids born in a war zone don't know any other way to live. So before they find themselves back there, we teach them another skill. I'd like to establish this rehabilitation process at Mother Base. That's why we're bringing those kids back here. It's not so much for their sake. It's for the world that we're trying to create. No other way about it. Those kids are amateurs. Bad for business to have them running around where we're trying to work. Bring them all back if possible. Or as many as you can.
So, it's somewhere to jail there.
We placed the White Mamba and the rest of his unit in the staff living quarters.
How's that going?
It's a disaster, but what else can we do? We've taken away his weapons and banned him from using his nom de guerre. Apparently his real name is Eli. He must feel like we stripped him of his whole identity. We'll let things simmer down. I put a guard on him for now. Still the question is, who is he? Where did he come from? And how has he survived?
He's still not talking.
No, he won't say a word about himself. But you know, it looks like he speaks English. One of the deck crew called out to him in English, and he said something back. He just lost it all of a sudden, started mouthing off at the guy in perfect English. He wasn't stringing together words he picked up somewhere.
So English is his mother tongue.
He could be from the east, or the south, or maybe even further north or south. English is well established in countries all across the continent. It's rooted in Africa like a weed, or maybe parasite is the better word. So just speaking English doesn't help us figure out where he comes from.
Could even be from off-continent.
Right. In any case, we'll keep an eye on him. If we learn anything else, I'll be sure to let you know.
Side ops list updated. Extraction arrived at marker placed. Marker removed. Marker removed.
The next one.
About the pathogen spreading through Mother Base. You've seen everything we've got on the outbreak. What's your opinion?
Textbook symptoms of vocal cord parasite infestation. And judging from this casualty list, it is the Kikongo strain, meaning a breed of parasite that triggers symptoms upon detecting pronunciation specific to Kikongo.
So our Kikongo-speaking staff are at risk.
Quite so.
He's right. All the victims do speak Kikongo.
So they can survive if they just use another language.
There is no guarantee. You're only dealing with the Kikongo strain. Other language strains may be present. You well know he was teaching them languages from all over the world.
The Devil's House. Nzoya Badiabulu.
There is no way to know how many strains he has at his disposal.
So how do we keep them from becoming symptomatic? You mentioned using microbes.
Use this. A type of Wolbachia. Introduced to a sample of the parasite.
Wolbachia.
A parasitic bacteria that colonizes the parasites, turning male to female and preventing copulation. You must cultivate more. What have you done with the infected bodies?
Cremated to stop the spread of infection. But we did keep a few for study.
Good. Take this sample, grind it to a pulp, and introduce it to the larvae now nesting in the dead. The Wolbachia will multiply rapidly within those larvae.
They're soldiers, not some petri dish.
Conventional cultivation methods will take too long. Extract the Wolbachia from those larvae and vaccinate your men. Kikongo speakers first. This is the fastest, surest way. No one is to speak a word of Kikongo until the Wolbachia are safely inside them. I will instruct your medical staff in detail on site. You have the appropriate facilities.
Yes,
But do not worry. I made a pact with your Peteholone on the honor of the Dene. I speak no lies.
keep an eye on him.
Will do. Follow me. I'll take you to the medical team.
Now, we must wait for the Wolbachia to multiply in the larvae.
How is the disease transmitted? If it's carried by insects or rodents, then...
There is no intermediate host.
So...
The vocal cord parasites lay their eggs in the larynx of the host. Most hatch and migrate to the lungs, but some are transported to the mouth through ciliary movement, mixing in with saliva.
Saliva. Droplet transmission.
Sneezing, coughing. Any food or water containing infected saliva. It would spread fast.
Indeed, and when the larvae migrate to the lungs, symptoms can resemble the early stages of a cold, making it easy to infect others.
Meaning a simple conversation would be enough to pass it on.
All right, so what happens after the larvae migrate to the lungs?
Updated.
It is as I said before. They mature by feeding on alveolar tissue. It is only then that noticeable symptoms appear in the host.
And by that point, it's too late. He's infected everyone else. It's one hell of a weapon you've created.
That is what Blag Anna wanted. Something that would spread easily. In truth, he's not the reason. But we will discuss that another time.
The Wolbachia have multiplied. We're preparing to extract them and begin vaccinating. But is this really the only way?
Select a mission.
Sure, it'll prevent infection, but the cost?
You would rather remove their vocal cords?
No. Tactical communication's the linchpin of what we do.
Unit dispatched.
What if we were to ban the use of Congo?
Insufficient. First,
Margot
there's
Place.
no guarantee that only the Kikongo strain is here. Second, there is the matter of how the parasites lay their eggs. Before they can copulate, they must be exposed to the pronunciation of a specific language for a period of time, like a container filling with water. But the duration between when the container is full and when the copulation actually begins varies from case to case.
Extraction.
In other words,
at Mother Base.
Even if the infected stop speaking as a countermeasure, it may already be too late. The only true solution is to prevent copulation through the Wolbachia, or by physically removing the affected tissue.
Do any antiparasitics work?
It sounds as though you have already tried.
Yeah. We tried every one there is, and
Detected.
nothing.
The map has
I
been
have yet to
updated.
find a medicine that can remove the parasites. At best, it temporarily covers their ears,
Why is that?
because the parasites are companions to us. To remove them inevitably harms the host.
Companions.
More than you think. And this is why the human immune system cannot eliminate them.
Orange.
Enemy presence detected. The map has been updated.
We've inoculated the staff with Wolbachia to keep them from becoming symptomatic.
That should also contain the infection.
How did this happen in the first place?
It has to have been a Cypher spy within our ranks.
If this is so, then why the Kikongo strain? If their intent was to wipe you out,
Skullface said the remaining English parasite was close to the boss. If this latest strain was his doing, he wouldn't have tipped his hand.
it is possible someone brought eggs
The map
onto the
has been
base
updated.
without knowing. Stuck to their shoes, clothing.
Well, that makes the most sense to me.
And where did the eggs come from?
You mentioned that your boss visited Nzoya Badiopulu.
Sure, but his gear's disinfected immediately upon return.
Then he was not the carrier.
Arrived at your
And not just the
destination.
boss. All staff dispatched to high-risk regions were quarantined on the flight back. When the symptoms first appeared, we checked and disinfected all equipment used up to that point. Any and all prisoners, soldiers, materials, and animals extracted during missions were also quarantined.
So, that just leaves.
I have seen children around here. Where are they from?
All over. Some were being held hostage at a mine. Then there were the troublemakers at Wala Yamasa.
Analysis complete.
Wala Yamasa.
Yeah,
Their clothes, their things. Did you burn them?
they're just kids. We couldn't. And besides, not one of them's shown symptoms.
The parasites don't infect prepubescent hosts. Their vocal cords are not fully developed.
Well, if infection doesn't occur in children,
It is possible they carried eggs on their clothes, and the infection spread from them.
Check the kid's stuff.
I doubt there is any trace left by now.
But if there is,
Analysis
some of those
complete.
kids must be close to... How could we have missed this?
the name Wala Yamasa got quite a reaction from you. I'm guessing the Kikongo strain was released in that village.
That region to experiment with vocal cord parasite transmission. The Kikongo strain. The settlements around the refinery upstream of Wala Yamasa were the proving grounds.
Please select
They
a
would
delivery
infect
point.
one villager, and record transmission speed.
Please select a delivery
Dangerous
point.
work. If they failed to contain the infection, it would slip. The surrounding regions.
At which point the world found out about the parasites, making them useless as a weapon. Incredible they'd risk such a thing.
The test site was densely populated too. A terrible place for such experiments. No doubt, they thought burning everything would wipe away all traces. The settlements were covered in oil anyway. Who would wonder if one day they caught fire? And so it did. They burned it all, living and dead.
Those remains.
But they miscalculated. Transmission speed was far faster than anticipated. It may have been the temperature, or hygiene standards, or perhaps the parasites reacted quickly to Kikongo. Whatever the reason, nearly all villages were swiftly infected, and the settlements reduced to mounds of corpses. Making matters worse, the dry season was ending. When it came time to burn the village, the Moneni River had swelled. Many of the bodies were waterlogged.
Meaning they didn't burn completely.
The corpses still contained viable eggs, and the larvae washed downstream. And when the people downstream drank that water,
That marked the end for Bwala Yamasa.
I learned all of this at the mansion. I warned him of the risk of eggs getting out.
And?
We are prepared for any eventuality.
I get it. Putting the oil field back online. The oil leaks, saner. They plan to pollute the river, prevent the spread of infection.
But the oil flow was stopped, and downstream the people of Masa village started using the water again. The PF soldiers deployed at the village were locals, spoke Kikongo. They were infected, and the kids survived.
I've heard enough.
And who stopped the flow of oil?
Don't.
We did.
That confirms it. The source of the Kikongo strain infection was Masa village. And the children brought it here. It is no one's fault. There is no blame to be cast.
The parasites, they were tested in other regions?
Their physiology requires that they be tested under varied conditions. Another test site was in Afghanistan.
So it was the parasites there.
Both the Pashto and Tajik languages are spoken in the mountains of Afghanistan, and population density is low. Ideal testing grounds for how accurately the parasites target only the specified language. It is also relatively easy to prevent the spread of infection.
And the results?
The first test, I am told, was a success. Once the Pashtun Mujahideen were infected with the Pashto strain, they were all but wiped out.
The Hamid fighters at Smasei Fort.
It was doubly successful. No Tajik Mujahideen or Soviet soldiers became symptomatic.
So the parasites proved to be effective. What about the second test?
Also supposedly a success. A Pashtun village was the target. However, the original aim was to obtain samples of the infected. In this, they failed.
And the village?
The Soviets enacted a standard scorched earth operation.
That must have been the village where Malak lived, before being held captive at La Marjate Palace.
Having had more time to think on it, the details shared with me may have been false. They are madmen who would do anything to cover up the truth.
They certainly seem to like tossing their problems in the fire.
As a boy, Skullface's life went up in flames. Perhaps that is what fuels his fixation with fire.